Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 440th film from 2021. This is getting a mouthful. I think I need to almost stop saying how many films in we are. But this is a 2021 film from Poland. It's a crime drama called Operation Hyacinth, or in Polish, Hiacynt. It's directed by Piotr Domalewski and stars Tomasz Zietek, Hubert, Milkowski, and Marek, Kalita. I am Jesse. I'm your host. Thank you for joining me today for this Netflix original film. As always, if this is a film you haven't seen yet and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because as we go, I am going to spoil this movie, and this might be one that you might not want to know too much about before watching. I knew nothing about it before I jumped into it, so it was a bit of a surprise to me. So spoilers as we go. Again, we're in the middle of winter here in Melbourne, so I am freezing. The heater's on in the background, so apologies if you can hear a bit of a buzz or a bit of a noise in the background, but I could not do this without a little bit of warmth. We do like to start our show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about a young detective who chases hard when he's not happy with the result of a murder investigation put forward by his team, even if it goes against what everyone around him stands for. There we go. That's kind of vague, to be honest. I probably could have given it a bit more context, because this is actually based around real-life events in the 1980s in the Soviet-controlled Poland at the time. If we jump into Netflix, and what's Netflix's logline? When you log into Netflix, what does it say about the film? It says, "This detective has it all. A beautiful fiancée, a bright career, and a seemingly solved case, but he's willing to risk everything to discover the truth." I guess that's about as vague as I was as well. And then when you click onto the film on Netflix, it says, "Not satisfied with the result of a murder investigation in Warsaw's gay community, an officer in 1980s communist Poland resolves to uncover the truth." There we go. That probably gives a bit more context than anything else that's been said. This is around some discriminatory behaviour by the police forces of Poland at the time. And this is not necessarily a 100% true story. There's some fictional elements, but it's based around a lot of factual things from the time. Around the world, what's this film called? So in Portuguese, it's called Between Frestas. In Hungarian, it's the Polish Hyacinth. So there you go. In Polish, it's just called Hyacinth. Obviously, in English, it's called Operation Hyacinth, and we'll get to it a little bit later on about what this means. In Japanese, it's called Hyacinth Blood, and in Chinese, it's called Hyacinth Love. There we go. They're almost complete opposites of titles there. So if we're talking about what this film is about, it's a drama film, and it's based on Operation Hyacinth, or in Polish it was called Akcja Hyacinth, which was an operation carried out by the Milicja Obywatelska, or the Citizens Militia, or the National Police in Poland from 1985 to 1987. The purpose of this team was to create a national database of all Polish homosexuals and people who were in touch with them. The operation in real life targeted the country's gay community, and the material gathered was used to extort men and to enforce their cooperation. It was launched under the pretext of tackling the AIDS epidemic and prostitution. This operation saw a significant number of homosexuals in Poland imprisoned, arrested, or otherwise persecuted. So this film, representing events that occurred during this time, is trying to highlight some of the poor handlings that were done during the time, and some of the quite disgusting things that occurred to people. If we talk about the film, it debuted at the New Horizons Film Festival in Poland on the 18th of August 2021. It also played at the Polish Film Festival from the 21st of September 2021 before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 13th of October 2021. This was filmed in and around Warsaw in Poland, and it was quite successful. Awards-wise, it had 5 wins and a further 3 nominations. So it won Best Screenplay, Makeup, and Best Film at the Polish Film Festival. It was also nominated at the Quarties and the Zygmunt Cybulski Award for Best Young Actor, and it did win Best Cinematography at the Polish Society of Cinematographers. So that gives a little bit of context before we jump into what the critics and audiences are saying about this film. On Rotten Tomatoes, this sits at 100%. That's only on 6 reviews, though. It is fresh. I guess only 6 reviews doesn't give you much of there's not much depth behind that. The audience is still fairly high, 87%. That's on more than 50 ratings, so again, positive. On IMDb, sits at a 6.8 out of 10 on a bit over 5,000 ratings. If we head over to Letterboxd, it sits at a very high 3.8 out of 5 on a bit over 21,000 ratings, and has been logged by 26,000 people. So positive there. Metacritic, the traffic light system of red, yellow, and green. Red, yellow, green, red, negative, green, positive. There's no critic consensus, but the audience has it at a 7.3 out of 10 on 8 reviews, which is green. So positive there. What are my early thoughts? What am I thinking about this film? I knew nothing about this film before starting it, and I hadn't read any of the context. I hadn't read any of the critic reviews or anything. So I went in cold. And I guess that's a little bit of a pun in relation to, it reminded me a bit of my interest and love of Cold War history and the events that surrounded what occurred during this time. And I think the way this film is put together, it sort of throws you into the mood and the environment of the time. It's really well done, as well as a very impactful story of not only love, but the wrongs that should be prevented in treatment of humans throughout the world. And you've got to say, yes, when you talk about film, you talk about the context of when it was released. So this came out in 2021, and what it's highlighting in society at that time, which is obviously sad that things that occurred in real life in the 1980s is still something that's being felt in Polish society currently too. So the director, let's talk about him. Piotr Domalewski has 22 acting credits, all in Polish, so obviously he does a bit of acting work, but does some directing too. So has 14 directing credits: TV, film, shorts, a Netflix miniseries from 2025 called Hounds Hill. Based on this film, I'd probably be interested in checking out some of his other work too. We like to talk about the characters in the films that we watch. We talk about, I guess, the development of the characters throughout. This was tricky because there's some characters that you really sort of follow along and want to support and want to see do well, but you don't actually know an awful lot about them, to be honest. And yes, the film's slow at times, but I think it's purposely slow and it works compared to the film that we covered last week, the Peruvian Spanish language film that was super slow and bored me. This is slow but meaningful, and I think that's through the characters too. So if we talk about the characters, Robert is the main protagonist in this film. He is a young rookie cop who isn't on board with his colleagues and those he works with in framing people for crimes they didn't commit. I think that's the simplest way of putting it. He mentions throughout the film through dialogue that he's working or he's moved to this area to do police work to help kids and the troubled youth. So he's got a good heart, but his father and his soon-to-be wife all work in the police force, and this makes things very hard for Robert as he has these expectations that are set on him from all corners of his life, and he wants to uphold this image that I guess he's been born into or told that he needs to uphold, but he almost wants to stand up against corruption and against people doing the wrong thing as well. And I guess that's sort of seen through his partner at work, Wojciech Nogas. This is Robert's partner throughout the film, who isn't afraid or scared to use and abuse his authority on anyone that comes across their path. And I think that he's almost given into doing what he's told. The complete opposite of Robert. He's sort of given up on the dreams of being a pure-hearted police officer, or a police officer that does the right thing for the people. It's just too hard for him, so he just slogs in and does what he has to do. I've got to mention the other. There's so many other characters that I can't really talk too much about, but the one I do need to talk about is Marek, who is this young student who I think he's studying German or something in Poland, and Robert connects with this character to use him as an informant on the gay community, but Robert begins to have feelings for him, and that's where a lot of the progression of this plot occurs, through Robert and Arek's connection and their relationship, and I guess the information Arek provides to Robert that allows him to continue investigating cases, but also the feelings that Robert has towards him as well. Let's talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that work? What are some scenes that didn't work? The things that worked. There's a scene where, this is right at the start, Robert goes home and he kisses this lady, And I was like, oh, this is his wife. And then it sort of threw me a bit because his dad walks in and they mention it's his dad, and it turns out that's his mum. So I guess that very European way of greeting family members, that sort of confused me to start off with. I really enjoyed all of the VCR and VHS references throughout this film. It really created that mood of the 1980s and reminded me of that idea of, like going to a Blockbuster or going to, in Australia we did have Blockbusters, but we had things like Video Easy and you'd go there to rent new videos on VHS, and you had to always make sure you rewound them, and if the tape got stuck, like just these memories of things from your childhood to do with those things. That was nice. I thought Robert was in bed with his fiancée at one stage, and this is at the start, near the start too, and there's this really good cut and transition to the murdered body on an autopsy table. I thought that was really well done. Robert and Marek, they finally go for it. I think I was just anticipating that throughout the film and just wanted it to happen, and when it did happen, I was very happy with that. Robert's dad forcing him to interview Marek, I thought that was heartbreaking. That really got to me and really set me off. And then the end too, I was worried that they were going to kill Marek. I was very worried that he was going to die, and that was going to be an emotional end to the film. That probably would have broken me, to be honest, but I sort of cheered when Robert whacked this hitman that was trying to take Marek out, so I thought that was good too. Things that didn't work, and there's not a lot that doesn't work, these are just little moments. There's a guy being interviewed by Marek's partner, Nogus, and he's like, I'll never do it again, I'm not going to get involved in the gay community again, blah, 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 I've got a wife and kids, I can't have this revealed. And Nogus is like, yeah, well, me too, but I don't do men in the butt. I don't know, it just felt a bit on the nose. There's a party that Marek has, and Robert goes along to, and there's lots of montage sequences of gay activities and mention of like flaming hot sausages and things like that. And I don't know, this is where there needed to be some steamy hot stuff for Robert to see. It just felt a little bit too G-rated almost. It was just like, let's show some montages of people having a good time at a party, and it wasn't highlighting this scene that Robert's trying to investigate and that idea too, that this is that scene that he's questioning himself of, is this a scene that I want to be a part of? I thought that could have been done better. And Robert breaks into this villa at the end. This is this big thing that he's been searching for the whole film, and it went on for a bit too long. He's jumping gates and jumping fences, and I think it did highlight, I guess, the idea or the use of mirrors throughout the film too, whether that was inside a taxi or here or him looking at himself in the apartment. Good use of mirrors in this scene as well. So there you go, some scenes that I didn't like, but tried to put some positives on them too. The themes, the ideas in this film, some motifs as well. Obviously, I've spoken about corruption and unjust systems and the discrimination that people face, but the idea too that there are people that are going to go up against this system and fight this and fight the oppressive surveillance states and I guess leaderships or dictatorships or people in power who abuse these rights that they're given. And that highlights the injustices faced by the LGBT community at this stage in Soviet states, which is still continuing today in various forms. There's also that idea too of growth and integrity and following your feelings and self-discovery, which is seen through Robert, which was quite nice too. What else did I take away from this film? I think I've already said this anyway, but the film, it just looks so good throughout. The 1980s Soviet feel with the grey hues and hints and tints, and there's cigarettes and smoke everywhere, and it was just so well done. Like, really looked excellent throughout. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts to finish off the show. I haven't really gone into this, but the title, Hyacinth plays a big part, obviously, because it's called Operation Hyacinth, and in Poland, hyacinth, which is obviously a flower, but it was a derogatory term, and I guess if you could make a comparison to English language, the idea that if you call someone a pansy's a flower as well, it's a derogatory term to refer to homosexual men. So this ties in with the pink files that the police are collecting on these homosexuals, as well as the colour of the flower too. So I think quite an effective title, realistically. Some questions. This sort of ties into it, and this is, I've already said spoilers, but at the end of the film, Robert goes in to save Marek and tells him to sort of run away, get away, and I'll come find you later. And the question that you have to ask at the end of this film is, does Robert actually follow him? Does he find him later in life? And this is that ambiguous ending of the film where there's the distant sound of police sirens in the background, and it sort of leaves you hanging a little bit. That idea, did they get together? I think as an audience, you want them to get together, but Robert, as I've said previously, so many expectations from his father and his soon-to-be fiancée. Does he just walk away from her? Does he walk away from his family? Does he walk away from his job? Does he lose his job? Was his dad into men as well? He's obviously high up in this police force or this militia force, and these connections with men that there's evidence of them being in these parties and with some of these men as well. That idea too. Does Robert just go, yep, I've given up on this and I'm going to go chase? And I think that's that. You've got to have a little bit of hope at the end of a film that they do get together at the end too. And I think you've got to highlight that the reality, I believe, based on what I've read, is that what's shown on screen in this film actually ties in with what was happening in Poland in 2021, because Poland's ruling party in 2021 led a vocal anti-LGBT campaign, and this saw Poland as a country ranked as the worst in the European Union for LGBT people for the previous 2 years to 2021. So that's a little bit of a sad thing, and obviously probably a little bit of a dangerous film for the cast and crew to take part in a country where these things are still occurring. I've got to say too, 2 weeks in a row, I think my takeaway from the film last week, the Fever Dream film, was European films and nudity and just some boobs on screen for the sake of boobs. It happens again. It happens again in this one. Anyway, let's wrap this up. We give the film a rating out of 5 on this show. For me, my voice is holding up. I'm nearly there. So this one, it's one of the better international films that I think Netflix has put out in a while. Like there's quite a few gems that hide on that Netflix catalog that if you don't open your eyes up to, I can't even remember what Hong Joon-bo said, the director of Parasite mentioned the idea that you can open your eyes up or open the world up just to that couple of inches of subtitles at the bottom of the screen. But there's very little wrong with this film, and I think the characters at times, yes, they might be cardboard cutouts as characters, but the performances, the screenplay that surround the film, it makes it something pretty special to me. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. This is a good film. It's well worth the watch. Check us out on socials. The voice is nearly done. Check us out on socials. We've got Facebook. We have Instagram. We have X, formerly known as Twitter. Jump on to answer our question of the week in relation to the film. So for me, the question was, is it okay to lie to everyone except yourself? Because this ties in with Robert and a conversation he has at the end of the film with his mother from memory, where she's providing him with his suit for his almost like, not graduation ceremony, but his ceremony of being promoted almost. And he's like, I've lied to everyone. And I think the idea is, yes, he's upheld himself, but I think he probably does need to feel a little bit guilty about this. It's okay to be yourself. He needs to be himself and uphold who he is to everyone around him, and to stop lying, because that would make him that character that person, that fully grown person that we want to see in this film. Other than that, we are back next week with another international film from 2021. We're moving away from Europe though. This one is an Indonesian science fiction film. Okay, it's called A World Without, and this is directed by Nia Donata and stars Amanda Rawleyes, Maizura, and Asmara Abigail. There we go. From memory, the last few Indonesian films I have not been a fan of. We've had some good ones, but from memory, the last few have left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, so hopefully this one's a good one. We haven't said this in a while, but we're on IMDb as well, so if you needed to check out our catalogue and the connections to all of the actual films that we've covered on this show, the easy links, click through, look at the connections, look at what we've watched. This is our 440th episode, so we're only 10 episodes away from a big 450. That's a huge amount of Netflix original films in a row. Give us a follow on our socials. Give us a like. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you next week.